It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected. Devlin, Untamed. The platform.
Welcome to the podcast, the highlights package, iOS It's Only Sport, proudly brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected. Martin Devlin, Lachlan War. Today, Justin Marshall on the show and a couple of different bits, talking about the All Blacks performance and also whether or not we really need to get all het up about the Haka being drowned out by music, pyrotechnics, and an A380 Airbus overhead on the weekend. Mark Watson, the ATM podcast, episode 98, a slice of that out of Paris. Mark is commentating the Paralympics at the moment. So, an update on that, his thoughts also on the Haka thing. Let's be positive. Matt Gunn joined us out of Twizel, as he always does, on a Tuesday. We spoke with Tim Horan about the Wallabies. Best test win of the season so far. Always a really difficult place to go and play and win is Argentina. Very narrow it was, but what a confidence boost for them ahead of the two Bledisloe Cup tests at the end of the month. And Matt Vincenzi from WRX Golf talking about Scottie Scheffler. Anytime any professional golfer achieves something that the only other person that has already done that is a guy called Tiger Woods, well, you've got to sit up and take notice. Scheffler's had an incredible year. 7 wins on the PGA Tour. He won the gold medal at the Olympics. He won the Masters. And equaled a record that Tiger set back in 2007. Why is he the best men's golfer in the world right now? All of that on this podcast for you, and we begin the show the same way every single day, which is tablets in hand. I say, gather my flock. It's time for a sermon. Okay, here we go. The uproar over the Haka. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
What a big load of noise about nothing. I'm talking about this media thrasher because it's way, way bigger than your normal media beat-up about the supposed disrespect to the All Blacks Haka on the weekend with the plane flyover and the music and the fireworks going off at Ellis Park just before the Haka ended. Who exactly is offended? Are you offended? How offended? Are you deeply offended? To the extent that you think you deserve an apology from South African rugby? Because that's what they've gone ahead and done. Why? This is nothing but a media-generated clickbait story to make a big something out of a little nothing. The jumbo jet flew over at marginally the wrong time. The guy in the DJ booth hit the play music and fire the pyrotechnics button earlier than he should have. The plane roared, the crowd cheered, the music blared, and in the end, so what? Really? I ask again, who exactly was offended? Some nameless, faceless, anonymous chat bots, a few online rent-aloud crowd types, those that work in mainstream media newsrooms? Who else? Scott Hansen, the All Black coach, said he didn't even notice it. The players just got on with it. This story is an embarrassment, is what it is. A minority of precious people way overthinking something that was never ever intended to offend. Look, if there's anything that we should be upset about, it isn't the Haka. Maybe it's the refereeing and the TMO inconsistencies. Again, this story is nothing but a huge, big nothing. I'm not offended at all by the flyover or the music and the fireworks going off at the wrong time. The only thing I'm offended by is this stupid story.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The platform.
Doctor, what's in the headlines before we go to Justin? I want to talk some rugby.
Let's start off with that South African Rugby have apologised to the All Blacks for any disruption caused during the side's Haka before the test at Ellis Park over the weekend, which included an A380 flying overhead along with music and fireworks before the challenge had ended. It's just appalling behaviour from all, not just South African Rugby, not just the pilot of the plane, everyone in the stadium.
They should reverse the result is what they should do.
They should. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, let's just blame the referees because they are being blamed for everything. Sticking with rugby, Super Rugby's lack of South African opposition has left the All Blacks shortchanged to face the Springboks away from home, according to loose 40th and Blackhead. I think many would agree with you. I think Blackhead is probably the first player to ever really say this, isn't he? Well, the first of my short and Not exactly reliable memory. Cricket news, Wellington seamer Nathan Smith and Central District's all-rounder Josh Clarkson have earned their first Black Caps contracts for the upcoming season. They complete the list of 20 contracted players centrally, filling the holes, of course, left by Devon Conway and Finn Allen. Still not really over that. Auckland FC have locked in another Kiwi signing for the inaugural A-League football season. Now, this guy's name I always struggle to pronounce. Nando Pianka? Pinaka. Nando Pinaka.
How do you spell?
P-I-J-N-A-K-E-R. P-I-J-N-A-K-E-R. Pinaka?
Pianaka?
Pinaka.
I don't know. I'm making it up as I go.
Okay. Moving on. Three-time defending Formula One world champion Max Verstappen has vented his frustrations following the Italian Grand Prix, describing his Red Bull car as undrivable, adding, if nothing changes now, it'll be bad from now on to the end of the season. Obviously, someone who hasn't experienced too many troubles with his car in recent years. Max Verstappen not happy. He still holds the championship lead, though. Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag has the backing of senior Old Trafford figures to deliver the sustained success that the club demands, despite their recent loss to Liverpool, 3-0 at Anfield, 2 losses out of 3 to start the Premier League season. British archer Jodie Grinham is believed to be the first athlete to ever win a medal at the Paralympics while pregnant. She's 7 months pregnant. Took out bronze, did Jodie Grinham. To the US Tennis Open, some key results or key matches going on. Yannick Sinner in action against Tommy Paul. He's up 1-love in the first set. Alex de Minaur, the Australian, advancing. Daniil Medvedev, comfortable win for him in the round of 16. Jack Draper, one of the great names in tennis, he's advanced as well in straight sets. And the women's singles draw, Iga Swiatek advancing. Caroline Wozniacki knocked out by a Brazilian by the name of Beatrice Haddad-Maia. Jasmine Paolini out as well, beaten by Karolina Muchova.
Devlin.
That is a disgusting act.
The platform.
81 Test veteran of the All Blacks, Justin Marshall, with us on the show. First up, the Haka. Is this just a big hee-haw yawn fest about something that no one really is offended by at all, apart from those that work in mainstream media, sports, newsrooms in this country? I mean, who is offended? Were you offended? What were you offended by exactly? If it was a genuine mistake, isn't that called a genuine mistake? Justin Marshall, his thoughts. Justin, I sigh when I ask you this question because I think it's the biggest load of nothing there is. But South African Rugby have now formally apologised for disrupting the Haka at Ellis Park. You were there. What did you see?
Well, look, first of all, they just got their timings off big time. Look, they want to put on a show, and Ellis Park is special, to be honest, Marty, and being there and being part of it, and the atmosphere and the environment, and look, ultimately the supporters, they are at the next level, honestly, when they walk into that stadium. And to have the All Blacks there, they just consider the All Blacks as their greatest rival. And I think it just generates this atmosphere like you never experience in the game really anywhere. And they then want to make it a massive fanfare. And by doing that, they want to add these components that they feel will add to the environment and add to the atmosphere. But ultimately, they just tried too hard at the weekend. The fact that they had the DJ playing when the Haka was going, and then the playing and the timing of that wasn't great either, and everything. Ultimately, I think they recognised that what they were trying to do was disrespectful for what the All Blacks know historically is something that they traditionally do, and they got it wrong, basically. So, look, mate, at the end of the day, good on them. They've come out, they've apologised, they got it wrong. Did it affect the game? Did it affect the quality of what we saw over 80 minutes? Absolutely not. All it did was just have an impact on the build-up. And look, at the end of the day, as long as the game's not affected and they get it right and they recognise that they got something wrong, let's just move on.
Yeah, are you offended? I'm not offended. I'm just wondering who the hell is offended.
Look, I remember doing the Haka when the Aussies were singing Waltz and Matilda. I remember doing the Haka at Athletic Park where the Australians went down to the 22 and they did a warm-up drill and they didn't even face us. 46 points to 6 later, they probably regretted doing that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like you go out there, it's part of your pre-game routine. The Haka, the national anthems, that's all about the build into the game, and then you start the game. So no, I wasn't offended. I when it happened and I was sitting there at the stadium, I thought this is inappropriate and shouldn't be happening. But I still saw the All Blacks unaffected by it. So, they still go about their method and their process and get on with the game. It's just a shame that the sort of all that paraphernalia that goes on around the game has an effect when it shouldn't do, because I can tell you now, and I've been here for just over a week, Marty, the South Africans love All Black rugby, and equally they're fascinated and intrigued by the haka. And a lot of people wanted to see that haka and wanted the crowd to be quiet, and they wanted the stadium to be quiet so they could see what it's all about. A lot of them would have been there for the first time in their lives and never experienced it before, and it was ruined by just that pre-game bullshit. So, look, hopefully they got it out of their system and we don't see it at the weekend, and I'm sure that they would have rectified that.
Hard to, when you're flying a jumbo jet, I reckon, to get the timing exactly right, though, isn't it? I mean, you can't really bank, take 5, turn around, come back again and wait. I mean, it's impossible. So, yeah, all right. I mean, I just think it's much ado about nothing.
I'll tell you, the plane thing, mate, sorry to interrupt you. The plane thing, the best thing for me was the time before this, when I was there at that stadium, nobody told me that the plane was coming. And I had my back turned and we were live on TV. So it came. The plane came over earlier, and obviously, for this one, if you don't know, they actually obviously throttled the plane, for want of a better word. I don't know how to fly one, so that's the terminology I'm going to use. So it wasn't as loud. But the time before that, when it came over, this thing was fair hiking, and I had my back turned to it, and I was making a comment on the microphone, and I can tell you now, it's probably the closest I've ever come to possibly after the effect getting the sack, because the word F nearly came out of my mouth, because it was such a roar, and then there was this big shadow behind me and this plane noise, and I was like, I didn't know that this plane was doing a passover, and I literally absolutely crapped myself and nearly said the F word on TV. So this time I was pre-warned. I knew it was coming, and obviously it's a lot easier when you do know what to expect. So hey, look, at the end of the day, it's pretty spectacular. You wouldn't be able to do it anywhere else in the world, I would suggest.
We need to talk.
A brand new game for you, Lachlan.
We need to talk.
A variation on the game that we always play.
Next!
This one is called, What Are You More Offended By? I'm going to give you 2 things to be offended by, and you tell me out of the 2 which one you're more offended by.
Next!
The interrupted haka on the weekend, performed by the All Blacks to loud blaring music and crowd cheering and a jumbo jet flying over. Or the TMO's botch-up for Mbomami's try. And I hope I pronounced that right. Mbomami's try. What are you more offended by? Mbonambi's try.
I'm more offended by his try. Absolutely.
Well, how dare you, Lachlan, to be not offended by something that you should be offended by?
I am a racist, yeah.
Well, obviously, clearly. Yeah. Because you should be, and you should be marked for life for that, for not being offended by this.
Well, what affected my mood more on Sunday wasn't that a haka might have had noise outside of the haka interrupting it. I was, my mood on Sunday was more affected by the fact we lost a test match.
Next!
What are you more offended by, the interrupted haka or the Warriors season?
Interrupted haka, absolutely.
Oh, for God's sake.
I glorify the Warriors season.
Good to see. This is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Are you more offended by the interrupted haka or the Broncos season?
Oh, the Broncos season.
See, there you go. So you're right. So that's right. I'm more offended by the Warriors season than I am the interrupted haka. That's worth getting upset about. The Warriors season.
Next!
What are you more offended by? The haka being drowned out at the very end of the performance, or Man United's lack of performance at Old Trafford against Liverpool?
Very offended by the haka being drowned out by a jumbo jet and some sort of music being played at the ground.
I'm just so grossly offended by our performance, and Ten Hag afterwards saying he's not Harry Potter. Will become Harry Potter, you twat.
I actually wasn't too offended by that performance at all. I actually was
well,
quite
what are you
pleased.
more offended by? The haka being drowned out, or Liverpool choking on Pep last year and blowing a title that should have been yours?
Asterix. Neither, because I never thought we were going to win the title.
What are you more offended by? The haka drowned out by a jumbo jet, or Alex Paulson ditching the Phoenix and signing for Auckland FC?
I loved that.
So I just exactly
more offended by the haka.
More offended by the haka.
Next!
What are you more offended by? The thing that we should be offended by, according to the mainstream media in New Zealand, that somebody messed with the haka. Or the fact that World Tennis can't organise a Grand Slam schedule so that the players don't have to be playing at 2 in the morning.
Oh, that offends me. Absolutely. It's
They did
every
this
Grand
at
Slam.
the Australian Open. They don't do it in Wimbledon because they can't play under lights there.
Well, they do it at the hard court ones, it seems. Australian Open, US Open. I don't know about the French Open because I'm always asleep when it's on.
If you're starting a tennis match between two ding-dongers at 11 p.m., what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
It's going to go till 2 or 3 in the morning.
We'll reschedule it to 10 a.m. tomorrow, can't you?
Well, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you've got one job, whoever you are.
Yeah.
If you've got two guys going on court at 11, it's not going to finish until there are no Ubers.
Next.
What are you more offended by? The haka and the disgrace that was the way that South Africa treated it? Or the fact that a year later, they haven't found the killers of Baby Roo? Let's put some perspective on things, New Zealand, shall we?
Yep.
How about putting that perspective on things for a little bit? Or an 8-year-old boy beaten to death in his home in Hamilton. Let's put that perspective on it just a little. Let's just serious it up a little, right?
Next.
What are you more offended by? The interrupted haka? Or all of the big names going out of the men's draw of the US Open?
No, I don't mind that. I'm more offended by the haka.
No, mate, apart from Sinner, who's in there, mate? I want to see
See, this is the great thing about women's tennis is that, you'll have a couple of favourites, but then there's just this random from Ukraine who turns up and makes the final. Some some woman from the Dominican Republic. And you're like, who are you? And then they'll win a Grand Slam.
The men's draw.
I know, but my point is that that's what makes the women's draw such a fun wild card.
Outside of Novak and Alcaraz and Sinner and maybe Medvedev, who else do you care about?
Is TFO still in it? It'd be cool to see him win it.
Why?
Because he's American, and the Americans really love him. He's actually got some personality. The other Americans are a bit boring. I think I just stole Dave Worsley's take.
I was just going to say.
I think he said that yesterday.
He'll join us after 3 o'clock. At the moment, Paul serving to stay in the set, 40-15 up on his own serve. What are you more offended by, Lachlan? The fact that the South Africans made noise in their own stadium in their own country.
It's not on, is it?
And drowned out the end of the haka, even though the All Blacks don't really care about it, they just got on with the game. Or the fact that one of the America's Cup boats is going to go home at the end of the week.
Oh,
I know.
I'm more offended by the haka.
Same.
That's competition, lads. Get used to it.
I mean, I've been trying to follow this America's Cup, and every time I start reading the articles about it, I'm not joking, I get 2 sentences in, and I've either, without even knowing it, swiped to the next article, or I've put the phone down.
Well, it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. The only boat that matters is the boat that we're going to play on the 16th or whatever it is of October.
It's like we're Man City and the other teams are a bunch of Spurs or Liverpools. They're good. They're not as good as us. We're far and away ahead of everyone else. And this is pre-season.
That's it.
What's the point?
What are you more offended by? The interrupted haka or the fact that Mark Robinson says the NPC's not fit for purpose?
More offended by the fact that he said it's not fit for purpose. And I'll tell you what I'm doubly more offended by is the fact that he hasn't done anything about it.
That's the whole thing. I mean, it's like an episode of watching Utopia or The Games or Gliding On or Yes Minister. You've said it's not fit for purpose, so what have you done in the last 12 months to make it fit for purpose? Nothing! Absolute zero.
Next.
Back to the business of what we should be talking about, which is the All Blacks' brilliant 62-minute effort against the Boks. The problem is, of course, that the game is 80 minutes long. However, there have been so many test matches in the past where the All Blacks have won at that time of the game, where we have been outplayed, and Justin's been involved in many of them when he was playing for the All Blacks. We always owned the last 15 to 20 minutes. Well, the worrying thing is 3 tests out of 6 this year. We haven't been able to score a point in those last 20 minutes, and 2 of those we lost, Argentina and Wellington, and now to the Boks in Joburg. So, plenty of talking points with a man working over in South Africa at the moment for Supersport, Justin Marshall. We were really good for 62 minutes there. We had a 4 tries to 1 lead. So, you got to put a big tick beside that. You know better than everyone that Test rugby is about 80 minutes, and they ran us down again in that last 20 minutes. So it's almost like, to me, 2 completely different games. There was the first game where we were in charge, we felt like we were in control, and then it all unraveled for us. Is that how you saw it?
It did. And to a degree, obviously, South Africa are the only team in the world that can do what they do with their bomb squad. But that bomb squad came on there was 5 of them that came on in the 48th minute. We didn't make our first substitute to around the 60th minute. And they weren't 5, it wasn't 5 players, it was 1, I think, at that time. And then we just filtered our substitutes through, whereas they replaced 5 in one big hit. So the bomb squad's coming. The difference with the reserves that the South Africans are putting on to the rest of the world at the moment is you're putting on test caps with the most unbelievable amount of test experience that then enter into the game after work that even equally as experienced players have already done. So they're in this unique position where the players that are going on probably could even start for the Springboks, but yet they're coming off the bench. But when they come on, they're not overawed by the situation. They're not in awe of the fact that they've got to come on and try and grab the game by the scruff of the neck to try and wrestle it back like they did at the weekend, or equally continue the momentum. And to me, that's the point of difference that they have over most teams in the world. I'll take that back, over every team in the world at the moment. But the All Blacks would have known that was coming. I think probably the thing that I'm kind of thinking about at the moment, Marty, when I digested the Test match, probably a day later and 2 days later, and now talking to you, is like what the Springboks are doing to us is what the world renowned All Black teams of the past used to do to teams.
Exactly right.
That were, that's what we used to do, mate. Like we could
Exactly
have
right.
a pretty average day, but we would run them down in the
That's
last
right.
10 minutes,
Yep.
5 minutes, and somehow we would find a way to win. At the moment, like at the Argentinian game in Wellington, like at the weekend, we're 10 points up with 12 minutes to go. Those games we would never let them go. And this is the probably concerning thing, that at the moment our DNA used to be that we had that experience, we had that X factor off the bench, or we had that resolve of a 15 that just knew how to get the job done, had been to World Cups before, had been in big environments, were unfazed by them and unflappable when the pressure really came on. These are the Test matches at the moment that we're dropping, and like All Black teams around that World Cup period at 2011 to 2015, in that situation at the weekend, probably wouldn't have dropped that Test match. But whereas South Africa at the moment are very good at winning those Test matches, they have reached that level where they can get the job done, and that's the only area we need to grow in. Because, mate, I cannot fault the way that we executed our game plan, the width that we showed in our game, the way that the blitz defence didn't phase us, the way that Damien McKenzie finally took some depth, timed his entrances into the game, gave other players space, the forward pack fronted, we were physical, we outscored them on the tries. Golly, I kind of sat there after the game, I was trying to put into perspective exactly how I was feeling. I was feeling flat because we'd lost, but I was also feeling encouraged that we can actually take these guys on, and we can actually get to where you and I have been asking the All Blacks to get, which is back to best in the world, because they are the best in the world. And to a degree, for 68 minutes of that game, we were better than them.
Yeah, this is the frustration, all right. And, we've seen it 3 tests this year now where we failed to score in the last 20 minutes. And we always look for patterns, don't we? We look for recurring patterns and go, okay, what is going on? Why is that repeating? And for 3 tests out of 6 for that to happen, you talk about experience. Look, something like 13 of these players were involved in the 2019 Rugby World Cup that are in the squad at the moment. There's 14 or 15 of them that were there in 2022. So it's not like we lack experience. I look at our bench though, mate, and I just want to know, tactically, what are we doing? Why aren't, are our substitutions coming at the right time? Are the right players coming on at the right time? What is the thought process in actually substituting these players? Because it just appears a bit higgledy-piggledy to me.
Possibly. Yeah, I'm really glad you make that point and ask that question, because I did actually say that leading into the game, and obviously being here and being involved with Super Sport and kind of not part of the New Zealand media set up to a degree, probably those comments might not have been heard. But I did ask the question on a couple of the shows I was involved with during the week, and equally in the pre-game when I said, and I questioned it, and I've always said to Razor, mate, when I do put these things out there and do be critical to a degree, mate, pick up the phone and let's chat about it. I've got to be that way. I'm your mate, but equally I've got to see it for what it is. And I was very surprised when the Springboks named their side, which they always do earlier in the week, that we didn't respond with maybe a 6-2 split on the bench. Like the side that we named with putting Cortez Ratama there, and then equally Anton Leonard-Brown. Anton Leonard-Brown can play from 12 right across the rugby field. Beauden Barrett can play 10. Rieko Ioane can slip onto the wing. Geordie Barrett can go to fullback. We have players with the ability to play multiple positions. So why don't we put a Dalton Papali'i and go for a 6-2 split, or put a Josh Lord, whoever it might be? Why don't we just match them? You know, you got your bomb squad, righto. Well, we're going to be tough as well in that last 20 minutes. And I did question whether or not we didn't respond, because we've got the flexibility and because we've got players that are extremely adaptable and can play multiple positions across that back line, that if we did lose a back or two, that we could actually compensate for it, but yet take that just a little extra bit of physicality that they're going to bring to us in that last quarter of the match, and think about that constructively. So, look, whether they got that right or wrong, and whether they're even thinking about this weekend, I'm not sure. Look, mate, we got ambushed at Twickenham pre-Rugby World Cup, didn't we? Where they put 8 forwards on the bench, and our response was to stick with the normal 5-3 split. So, you know, are we stuck in our ways, and are we actually like Lassie? Because he can be a little bit peculiar, let's face it. Mm-hmm. But are we actually thinking outside of the box like he is, and going, you know what, I'm actually doing this for a reason. And if you don't respond, you might find yourself being bitten in the last 10 minutes of the test match. But if you do respond and do something that we're not expecting, well, that might throw what I'm doing off a little bit. So, yeah, it's just something to throw out there and for people to talk about.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics, though. Yeah, we'll talk about the perceived offence at the Haka. Is it just another boring old New Zealand media beat-up? Tennis, a serve for tennis. There's a really strange rule in tennis that I think that they've got to hammer down and rid it from the game. Who does win the last NRL final spot, that number 8 spot? Lachlan, Dolphins or Newcastle? I'll ask you this right throughout the week. Sam Cane, we want to actually isolate his performance, because this high tackle thing, this shoulder tackle thing that he does, there's been 3 times of late in All Black Test matches, including the World Cup final, where he's done this. And yeah, I mean, as much as I want Sam Cane to play, this is starting to get a bit hazardous. As well as that, is it time, as Texter has suggested, that we relax our rules with the players playing overseas? Because right now, how much better would the All Blacks be if we had the likes of Mwanga and Shannon Frizzell still available? We're going to kick it off with the Haka, so I'm going to play you a couple of pieces of audio. Scott Hansen and his response to South Africa's apology.
Sincere apology and accepted.
Cool. And at the time, did you take any issue with it? Was it something that was just you guys completely focused on the game? Was it talked about as a team afterward?
Oh, personally, I did notice that the music was still on during the Haka, but it didn't distract what we were focusing on, and nor did it distract what the boys did during the Haka. So it's an important moment for us, as we well know as a nation, around our Haka, and it's us establishing a challenge. So we know how important that is for us, and well, that is in our traditional stance around challenging the opposition. So the boys went about their work, and to be honest, within our environment, Joe, there's been no conversation regarding it.
Okay, so that was being asked by a Radio New Zealand reporter, and so they haven't revisited it. They don't focus on it. It's not something that's a big deal to them. Jason Ryan, same question asked to him.
Yeah, look, we accept it if the apologies come through. Yeah, look, in all honesty, you sometimes get a bit of chaos around that, but, you know, the South African players themselves, you know, they stood there and respected it, as they always do. It's probably the officials, the ones that need the uppercut. So if they've made the apology, that's fine.
Okay, all right. So why are we harping on about this? And we're not harping on about this. There are elements of the New Zealand media, Lachlan, that are harping on about this. Is it a big load of who cares? So what? Move on.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. In that case, there's nothing more to say, is there?
Well, how many times in the past has there been some form of pushback by the opposition when it comes to the All Blacks performing the Haka? So there was, off the top of my head, there was the 2006 in the changing rooms, right? Against Wales, which we ended up winning that test 45-10. So that benefited you, Wales. Well done. In 2008, didn't a similar thing happen where us and Wales, they just stood there staring at us and we stood there staring at them once the haka finished for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I remember
And the
that.
referee was trying to get both teams to move, and they wouldn't, and we dipped them in that test. I'm pretty sure in the 2011 World Cup final, France advanced on us, which we loved, right?
Yeah.
Like we sort of almost, Ali Williams did, he always liked to move forward. And then there was obviously the 2019 World Cup semi-final when England had that V of swords, which kind of encompassed us.
I'll go back to 1989, where the Irish in a test over there actually marched and did a nose-to-nose. There was also the dearly departed Norm Hewitt. With whatever the English hooker's name.
Jason Leonard?
No, it wasn't him. It was another hooker who they ended up basically having a bit of a push and shovey.
The Athletic Park test with Australia, where they were purposely training in front of the All Blacks while they're doing the
Justin
haka.
Marshall reference that. Look,
it's happened many times before.
And, there's a couple of things here to it. If the players don't care, the coaching staff don't care, and the opposition aren't really disrespectful, what are we going on?
Why are we losing our heads over?
No, we're not.
No, but why is the media doing it?
Because you know why. Because it's clickbait.
But also, one point I want to make clear is that when you go to their backyard, you go to their stadium, you're in their country performing the haka, which is a challenge, and they do some form of a response. If you want to spin this as a response, that's part of it.
That's part of it. And if they want to play the music and play the pyrotechnics, even if they did get it wrong, well, that's their stadium.
They do what they want. We're in their backyard.
Tennis is served for tennis. This is there's an absolute change in the rules needed. And I saw it the other day. If you're having a rally and the person hits it and you're outside the boundary of the court and you're outside where the net finishes, and then you hit a shot and this guy hit it and it went below the level of the net and landed in on the line.
It went around the pole on the end, right? Yeah.
How is that legal? How is that legal? You're not actually hitting the ball over the net.
Hasn't it always been legal, though?
I don't care. That's just such the dumbest rule ever, because you've put that person way outside the lines, right? And then your advantage is that if they get it back and hit it over the net, you can just volley them away. But instead, they can hit it lower than the net and get it in court. What a stupid rule.
Yeah, okay. In basketball, if a ball goes over the line, but you launch yourself into the stands, more or less, to get it, throw it back inside before you touch the ground.
Rugby, same as league, yeah.
I think rugby, once it goes, like if it goes out and then comes back in, I think that's still out.
As long as you're not touching the ground.
No, I'm pretty sure in rugby, if it goes out and then comes back in, that's still, in football it definitely is. And I'm pretty sure in rugby that's still considered out. I think so. I could be wrong. I think so. Because when you punt, off it like a tap, when you punt, they don't place it where the ball lands.
As long as your feet are inside the line and you dive over and flick it back, I think it's okay.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, okay, then so rugby's like that. So all these sports are like that. So this is not really a different.
It's just the dumbest ass rule ever.
Well, I don't know, and it's quite incredible to see the ball. If a player can be skilled enough to
hit it over the net,
to hit the ball away.
That's what the net's for.
Hold up, let me finish. To hit the ball a certain way that it curves around that pole. That's quite incredible. It's quite cool to see.
Get it over the net first.
Oh gosh.
Who wins the last NRL final spot? Dolphins or Newcastle?
Knights, I think.
At home?
Well, because of the way the Dolphins beat my
straight away, you don't know.
Just appalling abysmal Broncos over the weekend. I don't know. But they've been a bit hot and cold to finish the season. The Knights, I like the Knights. I think they're a frisky side. I've said it for a few weeks now. They play hard. They play well. They're a team that I don't think goes away. I think they're actually coached pretty well. I think they let down by the fact they just don't have the same number of stars as most other contending teams in the NRL. They have I have one absolute superstar, one star, and Bradman Best, who's close to a superstar.
Yeah, he was brilliant in Origin.
He was. And they've both had injury troubles this year. I think they're both healthy now. But they don't have a great halves combination. They don't have really a good number 9. They have a couple of good forwards, rep level forwards. Leo Thompson, most notably, the Kiwi. But they don't have a lot of real good talent. The Dolphins have more talent as far as I'm concerned.
Who's winning it?
I'll lean towards Newcastle purely because they're at home.
Advantage.
And that's the last game on Sunday.
Last game, 6:05. Last game
bouncing.
of the whole round robin.
Newcastle's going to be absolutely bouncing.
Martin, the object of tennis is to return the ball to your opponent's court. What's the issue? They return the ball to the opponent's court, but you've missed out the bit over the net. That's what the issue is.
No. But the thing is, you can return it around the net.
I'm just saying, change the rule, mate. It's a dumb rule.
No, but it's always been that way.
I'm not accepting it. I'm doing a McEnroe. If you do that to me, I'm doing a McEnroe, mate.
Okay, so, yeah.
Sam Cane, does he have an issue with his tackle technique? Sent off against the Boks in the final last year. A high tackle versus the RGs, which he got away with. in Auckland, and now Khaleesi's cheekbone. Is this an issue, Lachlan? And is it an ongoing hazard for the All Blacks? Because I liked Sam Cane playing and starting at 7 ahead of Dalton Papali'i, but that's 3 times now in the last 3 games that he's played, and he got sent off once, he got away with it against Argy, somehow got away with it against Khaleesi, although I do agree with you, you could argue that both were going lowering, and so, but it's still a shoulder to the head area regardless, and there's 3 of them in the last 3 times he's played.
Yeah, but they're all different. I think the thing with the one at the World Cup is that he wasn't dropping. That was the problem with that one. It was a quick change of direction, but he didn't drop. It was a bit like the Angus Tautau head clash, which I swear I reference every second day on the show.
Never been a red card.
But there wasn't really a mitigation in terms of his actions. When they talk about mitigation for the tackle, they need to actually show some intent to drop and to minimise the impact. That's what was key with the one on Sunday, I thought, which is what... It's still a yellow because you make the contact, but the thing about the difference between a yellow card and a red card, I think, in the modern game is there's got to be an element of, not malice, but an element of more care taken for it to be a yellow. And because he was dropping down, but Khaleesi was as well. So that's why I thought it was a yellow. The one against Argentina, I can't really remember that one, to be honest, because I was at the test and I don't really remember what happened. You know,
that's what happens when you go and watch
people
it live.
think you don't know what goes on.
Well, you don't. I mean, every time I go to a game, you hardly watch the game.
No, you're talking to your mates.
Neck and beers.
Yeah,
and
having beers. You know, we were lucky enough to sit with the players' families.
I always think, look, I'll watch it at home when I get home. Finally, and a quick question to finish with. South Africa got the bomb squad. Is it time that we relaxed our rules? And this question's going to come up every single year in All Black Rugby till it does happen. To be able to select, look, effectively we do select players that are playing overseas, even though the loophole is they're still contracted to New Zealand. Players like Bowden Barrett, players like Sam Cane, players like Ardie Savea.
They play once that sabbatical is over.
Yeah, okay. That's what they do. Okay, well, let's just loophole again and rewrite the rules, because that's what New Zealand Rugby do to suit themselves about
Well, to be fair, they play for us when their contract at the other place is over.
Well, is it now time to actually think, if the South Africans are doing it and getting away with it, that...
Yes, we should.
Because we don't have the strength and depth right now in All Black Rugby. We've got a bunch of players. I keep saying 16 of the current 32 were All Blacks at the 2023 Rugby World Cup when we got smashed by England. It's not like, we've got this brand new rookie team that we're continually being told and sold. The only players who are Omua, Blackadder, Tamaiti Williams, Cortez, Talia and Darry. The rest of them were All Blacks in 2022 or previous to that. Those are the only new ones.
But in terms of the ones that played on the weekend, your point
okay,
right.
And there was 13 of them played in 2022 and the 23. Okay, so it's not a new team. That's my point. It's not a new team. We're told
the black jersey over the last few years.
Yeah, and most of these guys, the 16 that have been All Blacks since we lost to England, have been involved in the 14 defeats and 2 draws since that time. The losingest All Black record we've ever had. What I'm just saying is, my point being is that simply stop talking about the fact that this is a brand new team. It's not a brand new team.
I guess when they say that, I think it's because the coaching group is new and it's working with a group of players who a handful of them are debutants this year, a few of them were new last year. And to be fair, in 2023, we didn't play a lot of tests outside of the World Cup. And at the World Cup, in the games that mattered, you play a certain 23. You stick to, or 26, if you will, and you mix and mingle a couple of selections. So I understand when they say it's a new group in the sense that new coaches, a couple of new faces, and a mixture of players from the last couple of years. There's an issue with New Zealand Rugby where I had a great discussion with my old man recently about this, and he was a bit defiant that we need to go back to playing provincial above this and this. I think the game has changed to an extent now that we can't just go back to having the NPC only ditch Super Rugby. We have to go overseas because the best players, the best teams, the best countries are outside of New Zealand now. There was a codependence between us, Australia and South Africa when we had Super Rugby, that we knew that we were being roughed up enough, if you will, outside a test season in the club competitions by 2 other really good rugby nations. Now, one of them's gotten significantly worse over the last 5 to 10 years, and the other one ditched us. Yeah. So now we don't have that standard of play. The NPC's been dying for about 20 years, and it's somehow still every now and then murmurs in the background. But in terms of international rugby, Super Rugby's not fit for purpose. Lol. And then international rugby, the best teams aren't us, Australia and South Africa anymore. The best teams are further up north. So
South Africa's the world champs.
Well, they're the world champs, of course. But if you're talking about the 4 or 5 best teams in the world, 3 of them are Northern Hemisphere teams.
Agreed.
So it's at a point now, and New Zealand Rugby won't do this because they'll be defiant. They'll stand there and say, no, we are New Zealand Rugby, we're the All Blacks, we're the epicentre of rugby in the world, which is total BS. No, we're not. The Six Nations is. So they're never going to budge on that. So it's going to take 5, 6, 7 years before we've actually gone 3, 4, 5 successive World Cups without actually winning it. So there's no point really having the debate. But we do need to allow our players to play overseas in the best club competitions, yes.
Scottie Scheffler, the world's best male golfer right now on the planet. He has just concluded his season, and this is the best year of his career, winning a record 7 times on the PGA Tour. He picked up the Masters. He also won the gold medal at the Olympics. He has done something that only Tiger Woods has ever equaled. Why is he hitting the ball better than everyone else at the moment on tour? Matt Vincenzi from WRX Golf explains. Well, what a stunning year Scottie Scheffler has had. He wins the season-ending Tour Championship, and you add that to an Olympic gold medal, his second Masters title. The first player to land successive Players' Championship titles. First player since Tiger Woods in 2007 to win 7 events in a PGA season. You add in the amount of prize money that he's got. It's just an extraordinary year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you add all those things together, it almost seems unreal the way you kind of just laid it out that way. And we haven't seen it since Tiger Woods, and, we might not see it again for a while. And, every time I think he might be starting to slow down, because that's just what happens in golf, he seems like he, comes back and does it again. So, an incredible season for him. And
then you add in, of course, the arrest. At the PGA Championship, that just bizarre set of circumstances as well. It's just like everything seems to have happened in this almost 12-month period.
Yeah, incredibly strange season. And then you look at kind of the Schauffele wins 2 majors, but nothing else. And then Scottie wins the 7 events, but just the 1 major, and he still only won the Masters. So I think at this point in his career, what he did this year took a huge step forward in terms of his legacy and his standing in the game. But going forward, I think the next objective for him would be to knock off, one of those other 3 majors that isn't at Augusta.
Yeah, how do you improve upon this year?
You don't. I mean, for him now, I think everything's cemented in terms of his status in today's game, besides the rest of the majors. So, as great as of a season that he had, I think if you'd ask him right now if you'd rather repeat what he did this year or repeat what Xander did next year and win the PGA and the Open Championship, he would take the latter, because at this point, these players are defined by majors, and as great of a season that he had, I think the next step for him is just getting those other ones.
Why was he so much better than everyone else this year?
The ball striking just is on another level, and the strokes gain numbers back up the wins and everything that he did, and that's been on that trajectory for over 2 years now, where he's just been completely lapping the field in strokes gain approach, strokes gain off the tee. He's up there a lot. So if you look at most tournaments when he wins, he's gaining 14 or 15 strokes ball striking, as opposed to the player who's second best in each week, and it's usually around 8 or 9 for whoever the second best player is. So the big difference was this year he found a way to putt at an average level. He didn't have to be the best putter in the world, although last week at the Tour Championship he was one of the best putters in the field. But 2 years ago he was doing the same thing ball striking wise, except he was dead last in putting almost every week, and now he's about Tour average putter, which is, everyone said, imagine if he could just putt to Tour average, and now he's doing that. So we saw exactly how that turned out.
In terms of the guys that aren't on the PGA Tour, those that are playing live golf, is Scheffler ahead still and better than all of those guys?
Oh yeah. He's head and shoulders above them all. He's the best player in the world right now, and there's no argument to be made for anybody else. I do think in terms of talent and guys I would like in majors, I think next year the players who can challenge him the most are once again Bryson, Rahm, and Hovland. If Hovland takes that step forward to where we thought he was going to be after he won last year's Tour Championship, I think he's due for a kind of a bounce back season next year, and he's going to be contending at majors. So the 3 names, especially 2, I would say Rahm and Hovland are the 2 who have the best chance to contend with Scottie at these big events.
Matt Vincenzi from WRX Golf. Final question for you is he the right person to be in this position in terms of men's professional golf? I don't know the guy at all. You've been around him a little bit. He comes across like he's actually a really genuine person and a nice person. Is that important to you, and is it important for golf?
To answer your question, no, he's not the right person. And I think, the ratings having a severe drop-off this year have shown that. And I hate to say that he's not the right person, because I agree. He is a genuinely great person, family man. He seems like a great guy in every respect. But in terms of what golf needs to thrive and grow and get people interested in the professional game again, that's had a lot of problems over the last few years. No, he's not the right guy, because he's very, I don't want to call him boring, but he's not eccentric on the golf course. He's very, and that's what makes him successful too, right? He's very poised, very calm, doesn't really do too much. So I think it's not the right guy for golf, but we can't. People have been saying they'd like to see another dominant player, and that would be great for golf. And now we have one, and he's not the right one. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get that total package, but I think it would be better for golf if we had one of those other players come up and challenge him next year, because let's face it, it was a little bit boring, especially in the Tour Championship this year, when he's 8-shot lead after the first round, and there's nothing really to watch. I think it was different with Tiger when Tiger was doing it, because it was something we've never seen before, and it was the way he was doing it, and Scottie just isn't that.
Mark Watson is at the Paralympics, the ATM podcast number 98. Watto, a man with much international broadcasting experience. It's called Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, sporting events all over the globe. And he is in Paris at the moment to update us with what is going on there, plus his thoughts. Can we call it a debacle about the Haka, or is that just because we're making it one? Here's Watto. You are immersed in Paris, and I love the videos that you've sent me. Man, that basketball you were calling in that stadium was just going off.
Yeah, Bercy Arena, same venue that the basketball at the Olympics was played in, so where the United States won their gold with their dream team of this particular generation. And there's always a question mark whether the crowds will get behind the Paralympics following the Olympic Games, but they have. I have been doing the wheelchair basketball, and every single night for every game, doesn't matter whether France are playing or not, it has been a sellout of 12,000 people. And I have never come across an atmosphere in a venue like I had the other night, actually, when the French were playing Germany. When you're not commentating and you're sitting there maybe watching the game prior to you having to do your game or games, they actually hand out earplugs. I do not exaggerate. It is without doubt the best atmosphere of any stadium I've ever sat in. And then I was fortunate today to spend most of my time doing triathlon, and just the crowds out on the streets and downtown Paris supporting the para athletes and that. And so, look, a big heads up and a big congrats to the people of Paris and to the people of France for getting out and really supporting these Paralympics and really getting behind the athletes.
Yeah, I'm always just amazed when I see, people competing and with the disabilities, and I don't even know what the right way of saying this is, or the language to use, or the words, but I'm just inspired by it. When you see pictures of people like the young archery lady who has to do it with her feet, holds the bow with the toes, and then pull. I mean, you're just sitting there going, "Wow, you've had that much patience." You've practiced that much. You're now so strong that you can do that. I'm wowed out by it, Mark.
Oh, no, look, it is remarkable. And then you heard some of the backstories, and, some people absolutely born with their disability or their level of impairment. Others, it's come through accident. And, one day they have this life-changing moment, and then, suddenly their world's turned upside down. And you'd imagine being, say, as an example, breaking your back and being paralyzed, and how you deal with that. And then suddenly you find this pathway and you find the light through the sports that are on offer here at the Paras. It is remarkable. I mean, just watching these athletes today in the triathlon, having to master the swimming when a lot of them have a really high level of impairment and don't necessarily have the use of their legs in the swim, or the amputees who are having to basically ride on a high-tech bike using just one leg and then having to get into transition and putting it on, a high-tech prosthetic, and then going out there and, getting themselves through 5K and just trying to get the technology right, with maybe even the flex in the prosthetic blade that they might be running on, so that the other leg is, not having to sort of slow down or speed up to stay in time with maybe the way the prosthetic is, getting its ping off the surface and stuff. So there's all these little factors that come into play. And then you see a lot of the athletes today, it's the same story. You just see them suffering out there. Then it's this big smile as they come down onto the blue carpet knowing they've won a medal. And then it's just tears. And I say it, you're sitting there and it's very hard not to get emotional as a commentator. I mean, you just sit back, you let it breathe, you don't say too much. In fact, you don't really say anything once they cross the line. And you just see the overwhelming level of emotion. And then you read their backstory and you can understand why this means so much. And equally, I think those messages and stories are really starting to get out there with the Paralympics.
And then you wake up in New Zealand and the major sports story across the mainstream media is, we're all so offended at the fact you flew a plane over and you played the music and you did the pyrotechnics at the end of the haka. And you put some perspective on that after what you've just said to us now. Put some perspective. Really, are we really outraged? Who's offended here, Mark? Apart from a few people and nerdy people in newsrooms, I don't know anyone that's offended or was so outraged by it. Look, if a mistake was made, a mistake was made. But to national apologies and just stop it, mate.
Yeah, no, I mean, I watched it here and I saw that aeroplane. I couldn't understand why they were focusing a little bit on the aeroplane and television on the haka so much. And I thought, maybe it's just, directors behind the scene are running around and mistakes happen and, they're urgently just trying to correct that. But you're right. I mean, we've got a responsibility. The media have a responsibility in this country to report the news, not make the news. And I think that's part of the reason why people have just lost trust in New Zealand media is the fact that they just start creating stories now. How often do you hear outrage? People are outraged. What? You saw 2 people on social media who have complained.
Anonymous people.
Have said something, nothing. They never tell you who the people are in the stories who are outraged, how many people are outraged by it. Look, to be perfectly honest, Martin, I'm not even a big fan of the haka. I've always said this. I'm over it. I don't think it's a performance enhancer. I think it does affect us. Look, admittedly, we got off to a really good start on Saturday in South Africa. But I think a lot of the time, we get off to a bit of a slow start. And I've always said it. I just don't like it that close to kick-off. And I was talking to my South African colleague. You would have heard him doing most of the cycling at the Summer Games. And he himself is a South African who's incredibly passionate, says that it's just, even him, he just finds it sort of just, I don't know, overdone and lost its aura a little bit. But yeah, I think it's a storm in a teacup. It's interesting, isn't it? That's the big story at home. This is the same media who love to pick up companies and love to pick up people every time they step out of line. And, they love to preach equity and equality. Well, where is the equity and equality around the Paralympics versus the coverage that the Summer Games got? That's right, we might not have quite the same interest and therefore it might affect us commercially. So, they're all they're just virtue signaling, aren't they? They all preach this equity and equality, but when it comes to their own bottom line, they don't back that up. And I think that is really disappointing. That the athletes at the Paralympics really are getting pretty average coverage, I would have thought, in comparison to the Summer Games, but also at the expense of the flyover and how New Zealanders are insulted.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform. It's only sport with Martin Devlin on The Platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.